gathering and coverage has changed tremendously since the rise of social media. The news cycle is now 24 hours. That means that there's instant access to information on the plus side. On the negative side, it means that there's very little time for verification of the news.
Not every story is going to be a video, and not every story is going to be a 1,000-word article, but because of digital media, this is possible to have it all together.
These days, you really have to not only file your report for television, but also for social media. And bosses look at the followings that you have, your engagement. You really have to be a multifaceted journalist now.
The relationships that we have, journalists have with our audience. We now have a much closer relationship. We're plugged into what they think and feel, and they to us. And so that's affected how our news has developed.
I use social media so much that I neglect print. I neglect newspapers. Except every now and then on the weekend, I do happen to have a Washington Post at my doorstep. So
in the morning, I look on Twitter from my little sources. I like to look at NPR because I know they're not giving you any BS.
I'd say 70% of the time, I'm always on my cell phone. It's convenient, and I can just have a constant cycle of news. Even if it's the same thing, at least I have a constant cycle of news.
Social media has really helped with telling stories in multiple languages, even identifying groups of people that we didn't know existed or didn't know what their stories were.
We hear about it all the time. Fake news. These facts that aren't facts, because when we did the job, we had to have sources, we had to double check and triple check, and when we put it out, the public expected that was the gospel.
Or our president, he quotes from social media all the time. I'd say 8 out of 10 times the numbers he has and the information that he has is incorrect.
Sometimes stories break on social media, so it's always a good source of information, and it's been a really good way of getting information out there.
I would urge everybody to make sure they verify facts before passing it on to someone else on your social media.
I see citizens who undertake the role of journalists in two ways. I think that they're very, very important in reaching, covering, exposing stories that your traditional journalist would not necessarily get if they were locked in a silo at their desk or even out on the street reporting. You simply cannot capture all the news.
I'd go to like all the major news companies and see what they're talking about it. So for me, that would be real news because everyone has it. It's not like a sure-proof thing, but with fake news, it's usually mostly like one particular site, and you can find it in other sites that have been vetted by every other person. So
now, the not-so-good news is that this ability to verify, to tell what is good from bad news, the citizen journalist doesn't necessarily have the skill sets to do that. So it's a two-edged sword, really. We do need people to be engaged and involved in news telling and telling stories, but we do need them also to be able to tell fact from fiction.
This era, I find that we're proving ourselves more. In this era, it's super important to be extra vigilant as far as with the facts and with the truth, and because people, they're hearing that. Fake news, the alternative facts piece. So at the end of my day, I have to be sure that what I have said is the facts, period.
Social media has become an integral part of how we tell stories in the news. You simply have got to be on Facebook. You do have to tweet. You have to Instagram those images that you're getting. If you don't, you're going to miss a vital audience. And so as a professor, I need to make sure that my students know how to use all these platforms to create the appropriate content for these platforms and not get locked in sort of old-fashioned ideas of what news is or isn't, or how news should be promulgated or not. So in the teaching world, there's been just as big a revolution as there has in the everyday world of the news consumer.
Journalist has to be a wordsmith. That's what you are called to. You listen to other people, you reinterpret, you give it back in a way that's more informative, a little more clear, but you've got to be able to move back and forth in the world of words.
You'd need to know a little bit of video and editing. You would need to know how to write. Writing is really important. As much as people say that print is dead, it's still important for a journalist to know how to write and to tell a good story.
To do all these different things, it's not just filing a story. You do also have to put it on your social media, but the tenets of the business remain in place. Please have your sources together. Please just don't try to be first. Get the story right. It's important to remember that. And sometimes when you're out there by yourself, you're shooting it, you're editing it, and you got to come back, put something on the web. It's a long day, but at the end of the day, your credibility and your name is really all you have in the business.